Hello there, welcome to Fridays at Noon. I'm Michael Chen, the executive producer and director for this talk show series. Fridays at Noon is a bi-weekly lunch and learn series that offers education on professional development topics to the University of Denver employees. For more information and to view past videos, please visit du.edu/HR and click on the People Development link. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the show.
And bring your lunch.
Oh, and bring your lunch.
Welcome to Fridays at Noon. I'm Greg Geeson, manager of People Development, and today our show is called Wayne's World. And joining me is Wayne Armstrong, the photographer for the University of Denver. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you, Greg.
So what we're going to do is really highlight some of your photos, and then I know that there's a story behind all of them.
Yeah.
And so we'll just kind of go through some of them, but I want to ask you some questions first, just so people kind of get to know who you are. So I guess first off, tell me a little bit about your background and how one gets to become a professional photographer.
Okay, well, it all started with my dad. My dad was a commercial photographer. He didn't do weddings or things like that, but he did billboards on the freeway and that sort of a thing. He came out of World War II, where he was a photographer in the Marine Corps, and then began a commercial business that was very successful, all during my growing up. So he wasn't the kind of guy that pushed anything, but just because I would spend my summers in the darkroom helping him out, watch him in the studio, I sort of gained more knowledge than I even knew. And I didn't have any interest in it all the way through up until the time that I ended up going into the service. And I became a photographer in the Air Force, not because of my skill level, but just because I passed a test on my knowledge and I was able to bypass all the training. So the service sent me right into that job, and that's sort of the short story. And then when I got out, I worked as a photojournalist in newspapers, and it all kind of went from there.
Would you say it's something you're passionate about?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think anybody that's passionate about their job, when you're in the middle of doing it or you're doing something, it's not even work. You're so wrapped up in what you're doing, and you're enjoying the process so much that the end result is really all you care about. Now, there are things, obviously, that become a grind over time, but that's, part of any job. But I would say when I'm working on something, in particular portraits and some of the things that I'll show you later that are more complicated and challenging and more creatively challenging to execute, those are the things that, to me, really want to make me wake up in the morning.
Yeah. So Wayne, in your opinion, what separates or what's the difference between a good photographer and a great photographer?
Well, typically photographers fall into two different categories. They're either very creative or they're very technical. And some of them will even make the case that one or the other doesn't matter. Now that I'm at the position that I'm in, I think that you equally have to have both, which requires you to be able to control the technical side so that what you see you can render to bring out whatever story it is that you're trying to tell by taking that photo. So I see a lot of photos that are great from either the person has a very good eye or technically they're great, but they're missing that artistic. So to try to get those two and to do it on the fly consistently, that's what separates a great photographer from a good one.
Yeah. All right. So walk us through, like, when you are going to take a photo, and I know it, depending on the type of photo, it might vary, but what are the things you automatically look for?
Right. The first thing that I try to do is eliminate the variables. There are so many variables in photography, on the technical side in particular, that if you know that you're going to be photographing something in a certain place, if you can try to go there, if you can get a lay of the way things are, anything that you can do to eliminate any potential thing that might happen at the last second is going to work in your favor. Then you can go in there with a clear head and you can just focus on trying to capture the moment or trying to render the thing that it is that you want to render. Most of the time when I get myself in trouble, it's a last minute thing. I don't have an approach. I don't have an idea. I'm not familiar with the surroundings. And that's when, the potential for disaster is there. But having worked at the university for so long, I can almost know that if I'm going, for instance, I'm going to shoot in Magnus Arena, I already know what the camera settings are. So as I'm walking there, I'm setting the camera in the general thing of where I know I am. So even if I get there and I lose my head and I start thinking about what I'm doing and forget about the technical, I'm somewhere close.
Yeah.
But you have to stop yourself and you have to take a breath and have to make sure and check that you've got it. So eliminating the variables is the very first thing that I try to do.
Yeah. So is there, with the photography world, so many photos get doctored up these days.
Yeah.
Is that considered creative, a good thing, a bad thing? Like, what's the feel?
Well,
about that?
you've reached on kind of a controversial area. I think what you've got to do, what people have got to understand, and I think this is a big misunderstanding, is back in the day, there's this notion that somehow it was noble, a lot more noble than it is now because of the electronics. But it really wasn't. I worked in newspapers for many years, and we would basically take the photo, run the film into the darkroom, pick the one that we wanted to make the deadline, throw it in the enlarger, oftentimes still wet, and you would be in there dodging and burning, and there were techniques that you could use. My dad would take a wrapper off an old cigarette box, the thin cellophane, and he'd rumple it up and try to get a softening effect on faces and whatnot. Now, when we were dealing in the newspaper with just direct and straight news, you couldn't do the cellophane, but you could burn and you could dodge. And of course, the lens you choose, the crop you choose, the camera, all those things you choose, you're manipulating the image. So this idea that it's pure because it was film, I just don't happen to agree with. Now, having said that, we put very strict guidelines in place here at DU. So if it's a news story, we don't manipulate anything. We lighten and darken and that sort of a thing. But we don't throw things out of focus on purpose and sharpen things. We don't go crazy. Very limited to what you can do. Basically what you would do in the darkroom. But if it's a portraiture or if it's something that is a illustration, a photo illustration of some kind, or some kind of hybrid of that, then all bets are off, but you have to then state in the credit that it's a photo illustration, so that people will still be able to trust you when they see a news photo and know that there is thought going into the fact that you're limiting yourself into what you can do because the possibilities are endless.
So what are we going to see today? Are these a variety?
As the university photographer, you sort of have to be all things to all folks. So I do everything from, of course, campus beauty photos to these photo illustrations that are complicated that I mentioned. So I brought about 12 photos. We may not get through all of them, but each one of them is a little bit unique in their own way. So would you like to start?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Well, this one, for instance, this is just a typical photo, but this has been used a lot throughout the university over time. But the funny thing about this is I photographed this from across the street. Now, Dan Ritchie, one of our benefactors, and of course our Chancellor Emeritus, one of our Chancellor Emerituses, he lived in an apartment over there, and so the idea was I was going to go over to his apartment and photograph out his window. When I got into that room, or when I got into that building, they were doing construction and the roof was open. So I just went straight up to the roof, and the roofing guy up there said, "Yeah, be my guest." I got up there and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to get the behind what was going on. It was still too low. So I went to Home Depot and I bought a 15-foot PVC pipe, about a 3-inch PVC pipe, and I duct taped the camera to the top of it, put it on a timer. And then I went back up on that roof, and at this time now the wind is kicking up, right? So I'm standing on the peak of the roof with this camera, which by the time that 5-pound camera gets on top of a 15-foot thing in the wind, it's not easy to hold, my friend, let me tell you. So I had that thing up there, and I'm literally doing one of these, and I must have done it about 10 times in order to get that. So people see it and don't know that, but or they're like, you know what, can you go out there and get that in the winter? I'm like, can you get that in this? You're lucky you've got that.
Wow.
But I do hope to get back there in the fall one of these days, and now they make different apparatuses, where you can trigger the camera from where you're standing, and I would do it that way. But so that's one.
Okay.
This one here was for a story. Let me see. Yeah, I think the camera can read. This is here for a story on a group of students that developed or helped fine tune this eye tracking technology. So it would allow a person who is a quadriplegic, for instance, to be able to look on the screen and to be able to click a mouse by blinking their eye, and different things, you know. So they came up with this new approach that was cheaper and more accurate than what was previously around. So I went to go photograph the. Well, of course, they just had this little thing here, and no real ability for it to do anything, so that I could capture it. So I stuck it on his face, and they said, we do have a slide of the numbers and stuff that we use to, you know, the binary code and whatnot that we use to program this thing. So they put it into a projector that was in the room, and I had him projected on this guy's face. And then I gave I didn't have any lights with me because I thought I was going to be photographing something different. This is the thinking on your feet type of scenario. And I handed the reporter my cell phone, and so his face here is lit with my Apple phone.
Really?
Yeah. And of course, I'm shooting this at a very high speed to be able to get the depth of field and stuff that I needed. And then I take that noise out in Lightroom, which is a program that can do a pretty good job of that. So that's the story.
Very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, this one here.
Is that on campus?
So I guess they, you know, when the students are studying, they have this thing they call hump day. You know, it's a Thursday or whatever toward the end of the week when they start to have their assignments are due or whatever. This was right around finals time, and somebody, I don't know who, had the idea that for hump day they would hire a camel, you know, wrangler to come in, and they had this camel come in and give students rides to try to break the tension and elevate the mood. So my job here is, obviously this is going to look so out of context, nobody's going to know what the heck is going on. So I was hoping that I could somehow, you know, brand this thing, and I just got really, really lucky. Not only did I happen to get these students with the camel, but then I happened to get the DU shield on a big banner behind them, and I got about 3 frames, and this was the moment.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got this selfie shot, and these used to be interesting. Now selfie shots you see all the time, and to be honest with you, they're fairly easy to get because you already, you know, the people are doing the expression. But to be able to get one that's elevated somehow and branded, I think set this one a little bit more apart.
Well, so let me ask you about the branding thing. What does it mean when you say branding?
Well, you know, we've gone through a lot of time and a lot of effort to try to define that and define what the brand is for DU. And I think, you know, what we're trying to do is to show natural photographs, to not force poses, to not overlight things or overpose things to where they look like your standard typical college brochure. So we're going for photojournalism with an understanding that there's a marketing person behind the photos making sure that they fit certain criteria that we have determined. And we've done that through committees and through engagement with the community and getting their input, and through outside companies that we've called in to say, you know, what should be our look and our feel. And so we've written these guidelines, and they can be found. We have a brand book in the marketing office that people can come and get for free, and it lays sort of all these things out. So when I'm going there, obviously that's not foremost on my mind, but then when I go through at the end of the take, then I pay more attention to that.
So it's not just the DU logo.
No, it's not just the logo. It's the whole vibe. It's the feel. It's you know, does it fit into the strategic plan? Does it make people want to look at it in a good way?
Yeah.
And does it represent, you know, DU? In this case, it's fun. We don't get a lot of opportunities to show super fun things necessarily.
Right.
So to be able to do that and then have the brand in there, and of course the shield does matter. It's a recognition thing, and we want to try to get that in there, but we don't want to force it, you know. So it's a fine balance, and sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. But in this case, I think we did.
All right. I love that.
Thank you. That's a fun picture. This one goes in my once-in-a-lifetime, almost impossible to get. This is an instance that we won't run this photo. We did never run it, or never did run it, excuse me. But The reason is because, number one, we don't want students showing up with their pets
Yeah.
hidden inside their gardens during graduation. This particular girl was handed this puppy as she was coming off from getting her diploma, and the mom, I think it was her graduation present. So the mom handed it to her, and she was like so excited that she just brought it right into the thing and sat down. And when I saw that, of course, I was, I got excited
Right.
myself, and I was, got into place. And right when I got into place, I literally got that one picture, and it never happened again. So I love this photo. Unfortunately, we were never able
Yeah.
to use it, and I've never been able to sneak it in anywhere except now. So I thank you for that.
Excellent. All right.
So this is a photojournalism, obviously, type thing. Now we're going to go a little bit more into the photo illustration. And this is the complicated thing that I was telling you about. And this is an example of one that I just did the other day. This is for an upcoming issue of the DU magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And the assignment was get a really great photo, as great of a photo as you can get of Zach Miller, who's one of our stars on our lacrosse team, happens to be a Native American. Very nice guy. And at the last minute, I called him up and I said, I need to do something here. But it was snowing outside. And I couldn't get him on the field. It was freezing. And so I was, thinking, what am I going to do? And I had a 5x7 that I'm stuck in. I'm stuck in a horizontal with this guy. So this is one of those instances where it really lent itself to a photo illustration. And basically, I had him in his uniform without the helmet and without the ball, and he's jumping up inside the concourse inside of Magnus Arena. I had him jump up maybe 6-7 times, and then I photographed the helmet in the same light from the same angle. And then 2 days later, when the snow melted, I went out and I pushed this goal to center field, and I ended up, because I saw this lacrosse sign back there. So everything you see here is actually there. Right here, most people would know, after looking at it for a few seconds, that there's the big thing back here, the press box, and I took it out in Photoshop, because we can do that for an illustration. And I just wanted a clean image, and of course we're going to drop words in. So all these things you're thinking of, And I ended up dropping in the ponytail from another picture because it was impossible to get that right. And I dropped the ball in. Again, it was impossible. And then I put the helmet on there. And then in Photoshop, I created a drop shadow of the face mask to go onto his face so it looks like he actually has the helmet on. This was about, well, of course, 2 shoots and about 6 hours. 6 hours in Photoshop to get it done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, has he seen it?
He has not seen that, no.
I bet he'd love it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I would hope that he'd be happy with it. There's a lot of rules surrounding athletes and what they're allowed to get and take and all that, and I don't know what those are. So I just forwarded this to athletics, and I'm sure at the appropriate time they'll give it to him and let him use it. Yeah, but I didn't want to be involved in that.
Wow, very creative. Is this how proud of this are you?
Well, of course, I only see the flaws.
Yeah.
I was happy with it, though, and I would love to do more of this stuff for athletics. I think there's a lot of potential in maybe creating some posters for them. And I've started in the last couple of years to do some of the team shots, and I do a lot of the headshots for them just to help them out. But to be able to do this sort of a thing that they might be able to parlay into some other marketing angle or some social media campaign or something, I'm hoping that this will be the first in a series of those types of things. But I think it could be better. When I look at it, I think that the sky I dropped in, probably could have some more contrast. There might be a sun or something to give more of a reason for this light to be here. So, but it's, I'm getting picky, I think. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, this one is interesting, I think, here. So this, I don't know if I can, I think people, and most people are familiar, I think, with this shot. I took this for the 150 cover of the magazine for the 150th anniversary, and we are also trying to come up with an iconic image for the 150th anniversary.
I just realized. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So what I did is I went through a bunch of old photographs to see if I could somehow play off of the old with the new. And I found this shot of this lady in this first-year beanie, which they used to wear. And you can't see it in here, but it's a it's a publication that they used to put out their original magazine. And so I thought that would be a great thing for the cover of our magazine. Well, I thought it would be very easy. I thought I could just go out there, hold that thing up, and put it right there off the Mary Read and shoot the picture. But what I didn't realize is that the landscape has completely changed. So now, this is before any of this was here. So now it's all goes lower, so the water flows down. And so when I got out there, I was holding that thing up. I was up here on the lawn. I was way back here. I could not figure out where, and it really took me a long time to figure it out. Finally, in order to get it to match perfectly, the only way to do it was to photograph the hand with the picture.
Yeah.
Take the picture from relatively the same focal length of lens and the same height as this to get them to match, and then just fine-tune it in Photoshop to make sure the horizon line and the building matched. And it was not easy. But I think the great thing about this is it was used everywhere for that 150th, including when you first walked into the library. And so I was proud of the fact that it got a lot of use.
Wow.
These types of things where it's like a conceptual thing, where it's like we need something for the 150th, that's the thing where you have to have an idea, and then you have to figure out, okay, I got an idea, but can I pull it off? And a lot of times I don't, but this one I was able to do it. So
excellent.
This is another one of my favorites. So this is a story. This is a story about a DU alum. And by the way, if anybody is interested in reading the stories behind these photographs, you can go to the DU Alumni Magazine website, and all the past issues and stories are searchable. And if you just put in, for instance, Ghost Man or Ghost, his story will come up, and you can read more about this if you're interested. But this guy was the coolest dude. He's an alumna. And he has a business downtown where he gives tours of haunted buildings, and he tells ghost stories and all that. He's a very eccentric guy, but he's also careful about he doesn't want to be depicted as as an oddball. And so I told him my vision for it, because the Mary Read has a ghost story attached to it.
Right.
This room, the Renaissance room. So I put him in the studio. He's in the studio. He's not in the room. And I lit him like this with blue gel. And I said, could you at least give me an expression where like you've seen a ghost? And he just did it once, because then he thought about it and thought, wait a minute, I might look bad. So he just kind of did that real quick, and I snapped the shutter, and then he wouldn't do it again. But when he saw it, he loved it, when he saw it in context. Then I just went up to the room again, same angle, same focal length. And I added in Photoshop, I put the fire in there. You can see it's drawn if you were looking at it closely. But you can see every little, thing in his beard. And this was one that ran very small in the magazine. And the editor came up and for the next issue said, I wish I would have run that full page. So that was nice for me to know that she liked it that much, that she would have done that.
And of course, the significance.
Yeah, that's supposedly the eyes follow you around the room of that Mary Read
That's right.
painting. Now, I've been up there many times, and I haven't experienced any ghosts, but supposedly they are up there, so they must like me because of this picture. This was one of the first assignments I ever had. I've been here 8 years, about 8 years. This is one of the first assignments I ever had, and people don't believe me, but there's no Photoshop in this picture. This lady is again a DU alum for the magazine, and she is a pet lawyer. and I went in to see her. She advocates for pets' rights, and basically it's a lawyer. What are you going to do with a lawyer in her office? So these books were up on the shelf. I pulled them out and to give it some focus. And when I got in there, the sun was shining that day, because she had this little dog that basically just sits at the edge of her desks and watch her work all day. And I scooted the dog over, and I shot it with a 16 millimeter lens with as much depth of field as I could get. I threw a light back there to light her, and it's all in one picture there. But it makes people, when I'm doing this, it's a photo of a lawyer. People probably may not want to be reading that story. They might know a lawyer. They're not interested if it's just a headshot. But this, it makes them want to look at it.
Yes, right.
And if it makes them want to look at it for that extra second and then read the story, then I feel like I've done my job. So, yeah, this is one of those moments.
I want that dog. That's what I want.
This is not the same dog that was licking the face of the graduate, by the way.
So we got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, 5 minutes left, and we'll zip through these.
Best.
The best? Well, let me show you this one. So this, I'll tell you this story real quick. This was a photo I used at the last graduation. It did not run. We have not used this. It's one of these moments that you'll never get again. And I was leaving the graduation. I was done. I had finished, and I was on my way. My cameras were turned off. And this mother and two of her daughters are walking with this sign of this kid's face. And I said, "What are you doing with that?" And she said, "Oh, my son's going to come out, and we're all going to surprise him with the sign." They had made signs of his head. And I said, "Is it just you three? I'll meet you over there." "Oh, no, there's 20 of us." I'm like, "I'll be there." Ran, grabbed the camera. Just as I got there, he had just come out. The cheer went up. He went to hug his mom, and I got the moment with all the faces. So I love this photo, and I'm hoping someday I can sneak it in. This was a thing where it snowed, and spontaneously these students made this hill, and I just happened to be walking into the office. I saw it, and I ran over there as they took their turn skiing down. It's not set up. It wasn't made for me. They just happened to be doing it and having some fun, and I've never seen it before or since.
Now,
we've used that a lot.
The branding thing, is this branded or it's not branded?
You know, it's probably not branded in the sense that it's risk management probably would not be too happy about students skiing down a mountain that they made. So it wouldn't be something necessarily that we could put in an annual report or a brochure. But, if it's a banner about Winter Carnival or something like that, there are places that it can fit. Because it's such a fun photo, we have used it a lot. So sometimes, the photo might be good enough to where some of those other considerations might be pushed aside a little bit. Maybe not astringent. Not this one. Where are we at? A couple minutes?
Yep.
We'll end it here after this. We'll end it in these last two.
Okay.
So this was the debate, the first presidential debate. And we had a team of about 4 or 5 guys that I put together, some top-notch photojournalists. Neil Laron from the Columbus Dispatch, one of the top photojournalists in the country, was on my team. And him and I go way back. So we worked together with a couple other folks, one of my interns. And I was just roaming around while we took turns in different spots trying to capture the entire event. We shot about 4,000 or 5,000 pictures of that in one day. And this guy had these Barack Obama banks. They were banks, so a slot in the head. I don't know where he got them. He probably bought them hoping to triple his money, and he filled the shopping cart. He's walking around and holding them up and hawking these Obama head banks. And again, it's one of those things. It's not a photo that is the greatest, but it makes you want to look at it twice, and it so I like it.
It's fun. It's a fun photo.
Fun photo.
Yeah.
And then finally, I did a retirement photo for Scott Lumpkin, one of my favorite human beings on the planet. Very nice guy. And you can't really see the detail here, but I had him sitting on a chair in the office and lit him and photographed him, and then I photoshopped in this room that he's in. But it was sort of like the concept here was the sun was going down on his career at DU, and he sat in the studio with the coat and that for me, and then I was able to Photoshop in the iconic view of the back here of the campus, to give the twilight look. And he was very, very happy with that. So,
well,
that's a quickie.
Yeah.
View.
Thank you so much for showing all these. Last question is: so somebody that wants to kind of take their photography to the next level, they're just right now basic. What advice would you give them?
I would concentrate on one area first, because there's so many different disciplines, and they all require different equipment. So I would say if you're prone to shoot landscapes, for instance, stick with that. Stick with that and get to the point where you feel like you've perfected it, or that you've made great strides in that area before jumping onto other things. I think a lot of photographers want to jump in with both feet, and they want to do a model one day and a landscape the other day, and then they're going to do this and that. but they really require a whole different set of approach, a different set of lenses, a different set of cameras, and some of it transfers over, but a lot of it doesn't. So I think people are the hardest things to photograph. And I would save that to the end unless that's all you want to do. And then you just gotta to approach it systematically, so that when you go, you shoot and you write down, okay, I'm here at 12 noon, I'm in front of this building, my exposure is this and my whatnot is that, and I've got a light here, or whatever it is that the circumstances are, so that you have a standard by which you can go back and look and go, oh, so maybe instead of noon, maybe next time I'll go there at 3. Yeah. And maybe instead of a 10 millimeter, I'm getting these lines that are going like this, maybe I need to go to a 16 millimeter. And you start to systematically sort of edit yourself. And then when you go, you're much more focused, and you just keep getting better. And then, of course, consult a pro and say, give me a critique, and be open to that. But it's just time and effort rather than just going out there and hoping you get something.
Yeah. Wow. So if people want to have the university shoot some photos, where do they go?
Well, there's an online photo request form that we've created at the Marketing and Communications office. You can search it through Google, just DU photo request form, and it pops up. It's the first thing. And they can fill that out. And one thing that we're trying to let people know about is we really want to focus on those types of assignments that we can use over a wide range of marketing and communication channels. So if it's an awards ceremony, for instance, that is something that we used to do, but that we would probably recommend that the person go to a freelancer. Of course, they can always talk to us and make the case that this would be an exception, and we're open to anything like that. But in general, what we're looking for is community engagement, students involved in the community, research projects with collaborative learning, experiential learning, all those things that DU is really making huge advances and strides in. Those are the kind of things that we want to illustrate, and that frankly we don't have a huge depth of those sorts of images that are current. So now we've got some new mechanisms in the process to be able to align ourselves with some affinity groups, and then really try to get on the calendar those types of events that they have throughout the year, rather than finding out about it too late. And that's going to provide us with those types of things. So when people have those sorts of things, I really encourage them to get on there, fill out the request form, or call me, and we'll get it on the schedule. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your photos, man.
Thank you,
Greg.
Greg.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you at the next Fridays at noon.